What is happening, YouTube? Jayce Parkey here. Today I'm going to teach you the 3 camera basics that you should know to be a better photographer. Cue that intro. Alright guys, today we're going to be talking about how to shoot in manual mode, specifically how to know when to adjust your aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. So let's start with aperture. Basically your aperture is going to be the depth of field that you give your picture. Say you want to shoot a portrait and you want to kind of blur out the background, kind of like it is right now on this video. But a lot of times in landscapes you want a really narrow aperture. Yeah, because you're trying to get everything into the field of view. So within a camera, basically a wide aperture, something like an f1.8 or 2.8, and some lenses even an f4, is a really wide inside the camera. But f22 is a narrow pinhole. So what this means is that when you're shooting and you have, say, the 1.8, your camera is able to let in a ton of light. But when you're shooting at f22, it's really narrow. So it can't get as much light and the image is going to be darker. This is where shutter speed comes into play. So shutter speed is very straightforward. It's simply how long you're letting light in the camera lens. A long exposure, something like 30 seconds to even 3 seconds, depending on what you're shooting. Maybe 30 seconds for the Milky Way, or 3 seconds to make a flowing river look kind of glossy, is considered that long exposure because you're giving the camera a long amount of time to let light in. Typically for things like portraits, anywhere between 1/200th to 1/60th of a second is considered about average. And then you get to things like 1/400th, 1/600th, even 1/2000th of a second for those more action shots where you need really crisp on that fast moving subject. ISO is simply the light sensitivity of your camera. Most cameras probably go from 100 to 6400 ISO. My 5D Mark III goes all the way up to like 102,000 or something like that. It's pretty ridiculous, honestly. Most times you'll never need to shoot above ISO 800, 1600 getting up there. Sometimes I've shot all the way up to 6400, but typically by then you get pretty grainy. So ideally you want to keep your ISO as low as possible, but it's not always going to be the case to keep it at ISO 100. So a good rule of thumb that I like to follow is first set your aperture, figure out what you're trying to make with the picture. Second, determine what shutter speed you need, and always try to have that shutter speed as low as possible because that's going to allow more light to get into the camera and keep your ISO lower. Sometimes, like the picture I just showed you of Miguel doing a backflip at Pace Bend, you have to have a really high shutter speed. Although I was lucky during that day, it was a really bright summer day. Sometimes you're in low light situations and you have to up that ISO. So that basically covers the 3 things you need to know to shoot in manual mode and to start really experimenting with your pictures. If you're still uncomfortable shooting in manual mode, I would recommend using TV or AV. TV mode is shutter speed priority. So all it's going to do is let you adjust what shutter speed you want, and the camera's going to choose the other 2 settings that are the best. AV mode is aperture priority, and it's going to let you choose the aperture, and then it'll choose the shutter speed and the ISO based on your choice. So by doing those, you can kind of get a feel for what should be a good pick, and then when you're comfortable, you can really choose to experiment on your own and really craft the picture you want. I really hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. Catch you later. Peace.